We hear that word misinformation just, well, constantly now, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And it's hard not to notice how fast it can just shut down a discussion.
Yeah, it's like a shortcut, isn't it? Dismiss the idea without really, grappling with it.
Exactly.
And it's really interesting seeing how that plays out in different like professional fields, academic circles, how they handle critiques or, information that maybe challenges the status quo.
Which, well, that brings us right to our deep dive today.
Okay.
We're looking at this recent paper. It's called A Review of Behavior Analytic Articles that Cite a Source of Misinformation About ABA.
Wow. Okay, so the conclusion is sort of right there in the title, isn't it?
It really feels that way. It's already labeling something as, wrong from the get-go.
Right. So our mission here, I guess, is to unpack that framing.
Yeah.
What's this paper really telling us about how applied behavior analysis, ABA, deals with criticism, especially criticism coming from autistic people themselves?
Exactly. And a really key voice for understanding this whole situation is Dr. Jaime Hoerricks.
Okay.
They're an autistic researcher. They've got this deep understanding of behavioral control systems, from both lived experience and academic work.
That's a vital perspective.
Totally. And they've done this really sharp analysis of the Morris paper, giving us that crucial view from, well, inside the research world, but also as an autistic person.
Okay, so we have the paper being critiqued, the Morris et al. One, and that paper is looking at how other ABA articles cited an earlier study by Kupferstein from 2018.
Right, the Kupferstein study.
And that one was significant because it reported autistic individuals experiencing PTSD symptoms after ABA.
Yeah, pretty serious stuff.
So you've got a paper reviewing how that potentially critical study is being talked about within ABA itself.
A bit of a tangled web.
Definitely. So where should we start? Maybe with who actually wrote this review paper and where it ended up getting published.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack the who and where. The authors of this review the Morris paper, it's Cody Morris and several co-authors. And they seem to be, grad students or maybe people just starting out as ABA practitioners.
Okay, so not necessarily established independent researchers, more like people still in the ABA pipeline.
That's kind of how it looks, yeah. And that, for you, raises some immediate questions, right?
Yeah.
About, critical distance.
It does. And Dr. Hoerricks pointed out that the lead author, Morris, actually contributes regularly to a specific journal, Behavior Analysis in Practice.
Right. And that journal's connection is important too, isn't it?
It is, because behavior analysis in practice, it's closely linked to the Association for Behavior Analysis International, ABAI.
ABAI. That's like the main governing body for ABA, right? Sets the standards.
Exactly. So having a paper published in what's essentially an in-house journal for the main organization, well, Dr. Hoerricks flags that as a potential conflict of interest.
Yeah, it's like the industry reviewing its own reaction to criticism.
Precisely.
And Dr. Hoerricks also notes, as far as they know, none of the authors are independent scholars. And crucially, none are autistic.
So the review about how ABA handles critique is written entirely by people embedded in the ABA world with no direct input from the autistic community that's often raising these critiques.
It definitely shapes the perspective, doesn't it?
It raises that fundamental question. If everyone involved shares that same background and, let's say, investment in the field, how likely are you to get a truly unbiased look at Kupferstein's work, or even just an alternative view?
Okay, so let's dig into the main argument they make. This immediate labeling of Kupferstein's 2018 study as misinformation, that's a really strong way to start.
It's very strong. And here's the kicker, for you listening, Morris and his colleagues, they don't actually do any new analysis to reach that conclusion.
Oh. So how do they justify calling it misinformation then?
Well, according to Dr. Hoerricks' analysis, they rely completely on a rebuttal published back in 2018 by Leaf and others.
Leaf et al.
Yeah.
Okay. And who are they?
They are, as Dr. Hoerricks points out, very established figures within the ABA leadership.
Ah, okay. So let me get this straight. One group within the ABA establishment labels critical research misinformation. Based only on a response from another part of that same establishment.
That's exactly how Dr. Hoerricks sees it. It looks very much like a closed loop.
Right. And Dr. Hoerricks contrasts that whole approach with how they see Kupferstein's work and this idea of able-grounded phenomenology, or AGP. What exactly is AGP? Is it like Another study.
Good question. No, AGP isn't a specific study. Dr. Hoerricks explains it's more of a research approach,
Okay.
one that's really rooted in autistic ways of knowing and understanding things. It tries to center autistic perspectives throughout the research.
Got it.
So Dr. Hoerricks argues that just dismissing Kupferstein's work, which uses this kind of approach simply because it, challenges the main ABA story, well, that feels less like a scientific discussion and maybe more like reputation management for the field.
So instead of actually dealing with Kupferstein's findings, or the AGP method itself,
Right.
the Morris paper sort of sets up this prejudged stance and then basically evaluates other researchers on whether they toe the line.
Exactly. It feels like a preemptive strike against criticism.
Which leads right into what Dr. Hoerricks calls out as, like, a major flaw.
Yeah.
The circular logic.
Explain that a bit more.
Well, Morris et al. Defined Kupferstein as misinformation only because Leaf et al. Said so in their rebuttal.
Okay.
They don't offer their own independent critique. They don't engage with, the substance of what Kupferstein actually claimed.
Right. And then the irony...
Oh, tell me.
The irony is they criticize other researchers for citing Kupferstein without showing enough critical distance. But then they turn around and cite the Leaf et al. Completely uncritically. No distance there at all.
Wow, okay. That's a glaring double standard.
It really is. Dr. Hoerricks nails it, I think, calling it circular ideological enforcement masquerading as scientific assessment.
Strong words.
Yeah. It suggests the focus isn't really on the evidence, but more on policing the attitude towards the evidence, making sure everyone has the correct opinion.
Okay, let's talk about the scope. How many articles did Morris et al. Actually look at in their review?
Get this. Just 10.
Only 10 articles?
Mm-hmm.
That sounds small for review.
It does. And not only that, but all 10 articles were from behavior analytic journals, the ones closely tied to ABAI.
So none from independent journals.
Yeah.
Or other fields. Or like autistic-led research.
Nope. None of that in their sample, which, should make you pause and think about potential bias.
Right. If you only look inside your own bubble.
You're probably going to find views that echo your own. Dr. Hoerricks, who has a background in forensic statistics, they suggest this kind of narrow sampling could even be strategic, a way to back up a conclusion you've already decided on.
So less a broad literature review, more a very curated selection.
Exactly. And Dr. Hoerricks uses a really striking term for it, a loyalty audit.
A loyalty audit. Wow. What does that imply?
It implies the goal wasn't really to understand the wider academic discussion around Kupferstein, but maybe more to check which researchers within the ABA field were sticking to the party line and who might be, stepping out of it.
And who's running this audit? You mentioned the lead author, Cody Morris. What about their background?
Right. Dr. Hoerricks points out that Morris's doctorate wasn't focused on, say, critical theory or research ethics.
Oh, what was it on?
It was focused on a specific data collection tool used in ABA practice.
Okay, so very practical, very applied within the field.
Exactly. Which raises an interesting question about expertise, right? Is someone trained mainly to deliver a service the best person to judge what counts as misinformation about that service? Especially critiques coming from outside the usual framework.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Being a good practitioner doesn't automatically make you a critical scholar of the whole practice.
They can be different skill sets, and it makes you wonder, as Dr. Hoerricks suggests, about critical reflexivity.
Critical reflexivity, meaning?
Like the tendency or training to step back and question the basic assumptions of your own field. Are behavior analysts routinely encouraged to do that?
That's a big question.
It is, because if the main focus is just on implementing the techniques,
right,
you could develop a blind spot when it comes to engaging with outside criticism. And from an outsider's view, as Dr. Hoerricks notes, it might look like a professional group just circling the wagons, protecting its interests.
And the ending of the Morris paper seems to reinforce that idea, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, instead of, suggesting more research or a balanced discussion, it finishes with this direct call to action.
A call to action to do what?
For behavior analysts to actively go out and counter this supposed misinformation.
Ah, so it shifts from analysis to, strategy.
Exactly. It starts sounding less like an academic paper and more like, a memo on brand management.
Yeah, a directive to protect the field's image.
Dr. Hoerricks has a great phrase for this. Native advertising posing as academic work.
Native advertising, that's clever.
Yeah, like the form looks academic, it's got the structure of a peer-reviewed paper. But the real goal seems to be managing reputation, not advancing knowledge.
So the outward appearance is scholarly, but the function feels more promotional. defending the narrative, pushing back against critics.
So if that's what's happening, how does it stack up against what peer review should be? Dr. Hoerricks gives a pretty clear picture of the ideal.
Right. They stress that real peer review needs honesty, openness. It should be built on humility, accountability, transparency.
Its goal isn't to protect a field or silence people.
No, not at all. It's meant to push for higher standards, better thinking, ethical awareness.
And Dr. Hoerricks points to a lack of something called positional awareness in the Morris paper. What's that about?
It means acknowledging your own potential biases, your own position relative to the topic.
Okay.
Like Dr. Hoerricks mentions that 5 of the 6 authors on the Morris paper are from the same university. And the 6th might even be related to the lead author. But there's no mention of these connections, no reflection on how they might shape the author's views on critiques of ABA.
So they present themselves as neutral observers,
Kind of.
without really acknowledging their own deep ties to the field they're defending.
Exactly. It lacks transparency about potential influences.
And another thing Dr. Hoerricks emphasizes is this willingness to sit with discomfort. That seems missing here, too.
Totally missing. Kupferstein's work brings up really tough stuff. Trauma, consent in ABA.
Yeah.
A proper academic response would engage with that discomfort, wrestle with those hard questions, not just label it misinformation and move on.
And maybe the biggest point Hoerricks makes is about needing to listen to voices outside the field, especially autistic people.
It's so crucial. That insular self-referencing system is a real problem. Dr. Hoerricks contrasts it with how forensic science is organized, with the OC committees.
OSE, how does that work?
Well, they intentionally bring in a wide range of people, scientists, yes, but also lawyers, practitioners, even members of the public.
Ah, so they get diverse perspectives built right in.
Exactly. It fosters accountability. It prevents the field from just talking to itself.
That's a really stark contrast. It shows how easily a field can miss things if it only listens internally. Hoerricks is basically saying autistic people need to be real partners in this conversation, not just subjects.
Absolutely. Ethical practice demands you actually listen to the people most affected. Otherwise, you just end up in an echo chamber where criticism gets shut down or, worse, actively fought against.
So Dr. Hoerricks gives us some useful warning signs, right? These red flags for spotting when a paper might be more about PR than research. These native ads in journals.
Yeah, these are really helpful for you as a critical reader. Flag number 1, it appears in a house journal.
Like behavior analysis and practice being tied to ABAI.
Exactly, not an independent outlet. Flag number 2, the authors are all industry insiders.
Right? Practitioners, trainees, all aligned with the field being defended. No dissenting voices.
Flag number 3, a really narrow scope, only looking at internal sources, ignoring the wider world.
Like only reviewing articles from ABA journals.
Precisely. Flag number 4, the tone. Is it asking questions, exploring complexity, or is it issuing directives, telling people what to think or do?
That call to action ending.
And the final flag. What seems to be the main goal? Is it genuine ethical reflection, grappling with tough issues? Or is it primarily about defending the field's reputation?
Those are really clear markers to watch out for. So what's the danger here? What happens when you have these closed systems policing their own criticism? Hoerricks seems quite concerned.
Very concerned. They argue that when a field controls the debate, picks the reviewers, shuts down dissent, it risks becoming dangerously disconnected.
Disconnected from who?
From the communities it's supposed to serve. You see this growing divide, this alienation between the ABA industry and large parts of the autistic community.
And papers like the one by Morris et al., instead of fixing that.
They might actually make it worse. They signal defensiveness and unwillingness to really listen.
So what's the takeaway message from Dr. Hoerricks?
It's a powerful plea, really, for transparency, for that critical self-reflection, for the courage to face uncomfortable truths instead of just managing the brand.
Because scholarship should be about finding truth, not just defending a profession.
Exactly. And Dr. Hoerricks says, quite profoundly, that autistic people deserve more than just survival within these systems. They deserve practices that are truly ethical, truly beneficial, shaped with their input.
Wow. Okay, so this deep dive into Hoerricks' critique of the Morris paper really shines a light on a fundamental issue, doesn't it?
It really does. It forces us to ask, how can any field make sure its own internal checks and balances, like peer review, are actually working for progress and ethics?
Yeah, how do we stop them from just becoming tools to protect the status quo and silence critics, especially critics from the very group being served?
It's a huge question. How do you prioritize genuine inquiry, ethical searching over just defending established views? And crucially, what real role should lived experience have in shaping these fields?
Lots for you, the listener, to think about there.
Definitely. And we really encourage you, if you're interested, to check out the sources, Morris et al., Leaf et al., Kupferstein, and Dr. Hoerricks' articles. Form your own informed view.
Absolutely. And maybe we can leave you with this final thought to chew on. Can any field truly move forward, truly progress, if it's not willing to embrace discomfort, if it's not actively seeking out those critical views, even the ones that shake its very foundations?